Guys, welcome back to Cough Country. It's Steve with your cannabis news. You know what time it is? It's time to crack this egg and get into the news. Let's do it. And what better way to start than talking about orgasms, huh? The science of cannabis is saying that women who have a little trouble hitting that high note might find a toke beforehand will help them get there. Then the election's coming up fast, so we continue our dive into where do the candidates stand on cannabis, and we're rounding it out with Joe Biden, good old Joe. And then a new study just came out that correlated cannabis use and heart attack risk. But where's the hype and where's the truth? We're gonna sit down and talk about it right now on Cough Country News. It's happening right now. Cough Country, yeah.
No sticks, no seeds, just news.
From the Cough Country News Desk, it's Steve with your cannabis news.
We are talking about sex and marijuana. That's right, sex can be good, bad, funny, or sad. But a little toke before you poke can lead to better and more frequent orgasms and a more satisfying experience. People have known this forever, but before now, science has never taken it seriously. And some are hoping cannabis can be a real answer to closing the orgasm inequality gap that says straight women tend to orgasm less frequently than their partners. 4 states are in the process of adding female orgasmic disorder, or FOD, as a qualifying medical condition for medical marijuana. Recent studies are being added to a growing body of evidence that says cannabis improves orgasmic frequency, ease, and satisfaction in people with FOD. Ohio is moving forward with a scientific review, the first step to adding the condition to its qualifying list. Illinois is talking about it as well, and Connecticut and New Mexico aren't too far behind. Suzanne Mulvihill, founder and executive director of the Female Orgasm Research Institute, says up to 41% of women worldwide suffer from female orgasm disorder, and she's the driving force behind the change. She says there's research dating back to the 70s that says marijuana before sex increases the likelihood of orgasms, or multiple orgasms, ease orgasm difficulty, and boost satisfaction. She even wrote her doctoral dissertation about it. Women who with FOD have more mental health issues, are on more pharmaceutical medication, Mulvihill said. They have more anxiety, depression, PTSD, more sexual abuse histories. It's not just about pleasure, it's about a human right. It's a medical condition that deserves medical treatment. Women with FOD have a complex reaction going on with the brain's default mode network, or the interaction between the thinking part of the brain and the emotional part. Cannabis can get in between those two and change up how they're interacting. It's also the idea behind a lot of psychedelic-assisted therapies. But it's a tricky conversation, she said. She said the general American public is as squeamish talking about sex as they are about cannabis. And while attitudes are changing, the research lags behind. Mulvihill's Research Institute is trying to put together a randomized, controlled trial, the gold standard of research studies, to prove what she's saying. But since marijuana is illegal, no one's ever been able to secure the funding or support to carry out such a study. But this idea doesn't just apply to females. A study last year found that 70% of adults, regardless of gender, said cannabis increased desire and improved orgasms. 62% had even helped them improve their solo game as well. Another study found a connection between the passage of marijuana laws and an increase in sexual activity at birth rate. Ooh. But too much THC might send you the other way, as apparently it's dose dependent. The best results come in lower doses, where high doses of THC actually wound up decreasing the libido in several cases. Now, quote, "On the surface, this type of research may seem quirky," said one of the authors of the study. "But the psychological aspects of sexual function are all important to psychological well-being in sexually active adults," end quote. All right, guys, we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. We got plenty more news coming for you.
This is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. When you put them all together, you've got medicine.
Thanks for sticking around, guys. We got more news for you right now. Let's get into it, huh? Joe Biden seems to be the only meaningful presidential candidate the Democrats have produced. And since he is the incumbent president of the United States, it seems like he's a shoo-in for the Democratic nomination. We've had 4 years of Joe Biden, and with the potential of 4 more and legalization on the horizon, it's worth asking, where does Joe Biden stand on cannabis? When Joe Biden ran for president back in 2020, he said, "No one should be in jail because of marijuana. As president, I will decriminalize cannabis use and automatically expunge prior convictions." And since his time in office, he has been pulling for the title of People's Champion of Marijuana. While making a lot of initial political thrusts in the direction of legal cannabis, his marijuana policy has fallen pretty flat. His big win was spurring the DEA to reevaluate cannabis' Schedule I denomination. In 2022, he pulled the director of the Health and Human Services aside and asked him to do a review on cannabis, see if the science says it really should be a Schedule I substance. So the HHS and the FDA got together, did some science, and came to the DEA saying it should be moved to a Schedule III. So the DEA is deciding if they're going to make the biggest reform in cannabis law in 50 years, since the controlled substance schedule was even invented. And Joe Biden is taking the credit for it. It is a big move, to be sure, but some are saying that anything short of decriminalization is not enough. That marijuana will still be illegal, and people will still stay in jail because of it. And social justice reform just isn't happy with that. He also made some big swings when he issued a whole bunch of pardons for federal marijuana possession offenses. It was a move to show support for the legalization movement, but again, it wound up not really doing anything. The pardons amounted to nothing. Everyone who received one either remained in jail or with a criminal record. So the whole thing just felt more like a political stunt than reform. And if you go back, Biden looks even worse. In the late 80s, early 90s, he was a big part of injecting some steroids into the war on drugs with heavy rhetoric on marijuana and passing bills that increased drug sentencing and bumped up the prison system. Later, he acknowledged the war on drugs was a failure, but we had a moral obligation to keep marijuana illegal. And all the way through the Obama years, though his opinions did evolve a bit, he continued to disagree with legalization and support marijuana's Schedule I status. So while it looks like the times have changed, and so has Joe Biden's tune, he's done almost nothing meaningful for marijuana reform during his time in office. He wants to come across as the people's champion of cannabis and will do whatever the marijuana vote needs him to do to keep him there. But when 70% of the country supports legalization and you do nothing, it seems like he doesn't really have any real motivation to legalize cannabis and would be just as happy keeping it where it is. There's a new study making the rounds, and it's the biggest one yet to draw a correlation between cannabis use and increased risk of heart attack and stroke. The study compared people who had never used marijuana, daily cannabis users, as well as more moderate users, and they found that people who had used on the daily had a 25% higher likelihood of heart attacks and a 42% increase in the risk of strokes. Now, past studies have been taken with a grain of salt because many participants in marijuana studies also used tobacco products, which can confuse the results. This time, though, they did the work to try to exclude tobacco use from those results. The group they pulled from was big enough where they could, for the first time really, compare cannabis users who had never used tobacco to people who had never smoked anything. So it's clearer than ever before that THC does have an effect on the cardiovascular system. And guys, this is great. We need more studies like this to emerge from the dark ages of marijuana prohibition and blind ignorance on what is happening to our bodies when we use cannabis in everyday life. Knowledge is power, and we need to know the risk. We don't want a repeat of the 50s when we thought cigarettes were good for us, do we? But there are a few flags here that tell me the headlines might be more about clickbait than health alert. So let's talk about it, huh? Now, first off, this study made an effort to separate tobacco use from cannabis use. We all know tobacco messes with the heart, that's written in stone. But past studies, many of which were pulled and referenced in this study, did not do that. And most of them mentioned that a large majority of the participants who used cannabis also used tobacco products. So the referenced information is skewed towards cigarette smokers. Even if we eliminate cigarettes entirely, as in this study, 75% of the cannabis users interviewed said they smoke their cannabis. Neither this study nor anyone before it bothered to put much effort into differentiating how people consume. Smoking anything, tobacco or otherwise, is not good for the heart. Dr. Grinspoon, a leading cannabis researcher, said marijuana is not as bad as tobacco smoke, but it has the same type of carcinogens and tar that are in cigarettes. It contains hydrocarbons you would find in burning coal, gas, even garbage. Inhaling any combustion product is particularly bad for your heart and can cause hardened arteries. So all these studies are heavily biased toward people who are particularly smoking their cannabis. Also, keep in mind, we are still in the era of prohibition, guys. Weed is illegal. The further back you go, the more illegal it is. And the people willingly participating in cannabis studies are only the ones okay being open about illegal use. Now, in this study, going back to 2016, only 7% of the people interviewed said they used cannabis at all. Then take away all the other mitigating factors, and you're left with a pretty small pool of pure cannabis users. So it's very unlikely that this represents a genuine cross-section of the cannabis-using population that we see today. But that's not all to say that the science is lying. The science has more to do. That's what I'm trying to say. THC does have an effect on the cardiovascular system. It stimulates the sympathetic nervous system into fight or flight mode, right? It elevates the heart rate, it increases blood pressure, so it does elevate risk. But so does caffeine. The people really at risk are the ones predisposed to a coronary event. The media took a few facts, sensationalized them to get your attention. So it's important to pay attention to the health risks involved and look at the facts head on, rather than just scream fire and run out of the room. All right, guys, thanks for checking us out. That's your news for today. Tune in next time. Make sure you're liked, subscribed, and followed so you don't miss any of this. And around here, next time we bring the news, it's going to be just sticks, no seeds, just news.